Welcome to Meeples and Meeples episode 34. I'm Patrick.
Andrew.
Adam.
Ian.
Before we start today, we'd like to remind you to please come and visit us on our website, meeplesandmeeples.com, on Facebook, Facebook/meeplesandmeeples, and then, of course, our YouTube phase, also Meeples on Meeples. Today's game of the week is the Castle of Burgundy.
Finally, the Castles of Burgundy.
Finally, the castles.
We've been advertising this for several weeks. We're going to try to give a rules breakdown on this game. I'm going to tell you right now that the rules get pretty intricate. There's a lot of little sub-rules based on the pieces that you're going to be making reference back to the booklet to, at least for your first few games, because you have to learn what the symbols mean on especially the yellow pieces, or even what the symbols mean on your game board sometimes. But we'll do our best here. It's Castles of Burgundy is a European resource management game. It plays 4 people, 1 to 4. They say about 30 to 90 minutes, and it is composed of 5 rounds, and each round has 5 phases. The rounds are tracked up here as A, B, C, D, and E, and in each round there are 5 pieces, 5 sets of goods. They get laid out down here when it's that round, and they then track the phases, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So essentially there's 25 turns for each person that's going to play. As far as time management goes, it works out to be a little more than 90 minutes when we've played it, a little over 2 hours. But the way the game plays basically is you start the game by rolling to see who goes first, and you have your player tracker down here. Each person has their own corresponding piece. And based on who's furthest along the tracker and or who's on top within a given space, that's how you determine who's the first player for that phase. It's basically read right to left and then top to bottom. So the furthest right or and then the person that's on top is the first person that goes. Essentially, you have 2 actions per round unless you get the ability, like placing certain pieces, you can get an extra action. But your actions consist of rolling dice. You get 2 dice for your color, and you place those up on your player board up here, and you basically get to use the numbers on the dice to do a certain action. If you look at these spots around the board, they each have a die next to them, 1 through 6. Well, if you roll 2 3s, you can pick from the 3 resources during your turn. You can do that twice. Your other option is burning one of your dice. It doesn't matter, what it says on it, what number it is, to get yourself to workers. Workers are essentially ways to add 1 or minus 1 from your dice roll. You can also use your number to sell the goods. When you get goods, they go on your board up here, and they each have a die in the corner, just like the die on these spaces down here. If you have a 3 die and a 3 good, you can sell your goods just like you'd be able to pick from the 3 spot on the board. From there, there's certain instances where you can take extra actions. If you get silverlings, which is basically the money in this game, you can take an extra 3rd action and buy from the center spot anytime during your turn. The last major thing you do, and what the game is really about, is building up your estate. Everybody starts with 1 castle on their board automatically, and you want to be able to add more places, either animals, ships, buildings, mines, or knowledge tokens to your board to build up your estate. But again, it's based on your dice roll. So if you roll a 3, you can place one of your pieces on a 3 spot on your board. And once you place it into your estate, certain pieces give you extra powers. Buildings have one-time benefit. Knowledge has a lasting benefit throughout the game, depending on what it says on it.
When you place on the board, it has to be next to something you've already placed before, right?
When you place on the board, you can't just place anywhere where that number die is. It has to be next to something that's already on the board. That's why everybody starts with the castle on their board. Like I said, it is very complicated, especially your first few times through. You're going to be consulting that book a lot. So I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but that's gives you kind of the general idea of how the game plays.
Well, the one thing I'm going to add in there is the object of the game is it's a point-based system.
Yep.
So by placing things and filling out your player board, you get points. Certain items certain tiles give you points, and whoever has the most points win by placing items, special tiles,
selling goods,
wins the game.
And yeah, your score tracker, like a lot of these games, is around the outside, and one of your 2 player pieces tracks your score throughout the game.
So as usual, since Brian's not here, do we want to start with components?
Sure. I'm going to start off
With places any to start with this game?
with a positive is you get player boards on this game. I'm a big fan of everybody having a player board that has a place for all of your pieces. It helps keep it organized, and that way not everybody's trying to play off the center.
You get an individual everything, really.
Yeah, you really do.
I mean, your dice is your own color, your
Yep.
player pieces are your own color. I mean, you can track your own stuff. You can make sure everybody else is following the same thing. There's a place for everything on your board.
The one,
Especially where your dice is going.
Exactly.
Before we start the round, right?
Yeah.
That's how that works.
yeah, so where the dice goes over here to stick around. One thing I also like is each of these pieces has a specific appearance. There's several different buildings that have these pictures. And what that helps out with, and I'm just going to jump here and say this, we have a player that is colorblind, and there's some benefits to how they set up this game. First of all, even if you couldn't see that this is a brown tile, you can see the house on that tile and you know it is a building, or you can see that there's animals here that are cows. Even the resources have a dice number, so if you have color mix-up, you can look at the dice number.
you don't have to rely on the color of the pieces or the goods, for instance.
That would have been excellent to know
Before we started.
Before I actually started.
The one downside to it then is going to the color. If you were just to rely on the colors in this game are so similar that even not being colorblind, I mean, sometimes the yellows and the light greens and everything, they all start to
light
blend
greens, the
together.
dark greens. Though the one point where color blindness could come into handy are the large and small scoring sets.
Yep.
They do not have a way to differentiate each other from one another without the color, and so that becomes problematic.
Although they could have made the board a little bit bigger.
Yes.
That's one of the big
right
complaints,
here,
yeah.
I like to call it the labyrinth. They have these small numbers around, and then it jogs up and down and around, and they
To
could've-
basically fit in 100 count. They wanted to
Yeah.
get perfectly to 100.
and then you get these little tokens that say that you're at 100 once you hit 100. I think they should have just made it 97 and just dropped them down, and then you'd be at like 103 on this thing, and
Or-
it'd be all good.
The other
But-
option would be to make this board a little bigger, because this board
It
gets
is very close.
really cramped. There's a lot of stuff on there every phase and every round. It would be, add a couple inches on either
They
side.
probably made the box before they made the board.
We're like,
we
we got
Guys, we have a problem.
We got a great box design. This is awesome. And what the hell?
The other thing I have to say is, and this is going to be just completely honest, this is your basic Euro game, which means imagery
It's ugly.
is not important.
It's ugly.
Imagery is not important. It's functionable, but it is not a pretty game.
Functionable?
It's I was trying to get functional.
Functional.
Functional, but the bubble came in. It's functional, but it's not pretty. And you'll notice that with a lot of Euro games in that it does what it needs to do, but it's by far not one of those games you put out there to catch people's attention. It's not,
and it is
it's not
nice that
pretty.
everything has its space.
Has a
It's,
place.
it's very well labeled. I will give it that.
Functionable.
It's functionable.
The player mat itself is not extremely thick. It's not a piece of cardboard, which would have been nice.
Yeah.
But it's not prone to warping.
Interlocking pieces. I would have loved to have seen that. So you can interlock your right to the board.
You want to dock it to the board.
The one thing I do want to say, if you want a more difficult or complicated scenario,
Kind of mix things up.
if you flip the player board over, each person's the front of the initial side of the player board is exactly the same for each player.
It's kind of the basic game.
Yeah, it is functionable.
It's just, if you flip it over, everybody's what is this called again?
It's your estate.
Everybody's estate is slightly different.
Slightly
So when you're trying to catch points and fill out your estate, each person will all of a sudden now have a totally different.
Which would be kind of nice because
approach.
then you aren't all going to be going for the same number of every color.
Because this really would change your.
I might have more yellows than you do. You might have more blues than I do.
Or I might have 30 or 8 that are together, and this one obviously does not have 8 of one color together, so it's going to be a lot faster for them to gain
Are we
points
kind of
based
feeding
upon.
into strategy?
Well, no,
here
I'm just
a
saying
little
that
bit,
this is still a component. It's nice that it gives you a component that allows you to change
the game
gameplay
That is
Yeah,
good.
and makes it more complicated.
Are we going likes and dislikes or strategy next?
A
Let's go to
strategy.
strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody have a particular strategy that worked well for them?
For me,
Ooh.
the first time we played it, I went for filling up regions, and the second game, somebody was beating me to that every single time. So the second time I played it, I noticed I was getting behind, and I was starting to use a point count, and I noticed the pieces I had on my board, and I started buying the yellows, which give you additional bonuses at the end of the game to fill in. I was so far behind, I was using those to fill
I'm
in.
going to
the
second on that. The yellow, they're called the knowledge tokens. They give you, once you get them in your estate, they either give you a whole game bonus that you can continuously use, which can be really good, or they give you an end of the game bonus, which Pat found out was great. He was in last place, and with all the bonuses he got from the knowledge tokens, he jumped like 50 points and actually won the game at the end.
So we're talking get those early or get those late, or depending on which...
Depending on your strategy. My first strategy
I
went
would
to
say
crap.
depending on
and
the
so that's-
knowledge piece itself, because
Because
some of them
yeah.
are more helpful during gameplay,
But-
and some of them are more helpful at the end of game.
Well, break it down. You only have so many spots you can actually play them on. So where do you put the breaks at?
With me, I tried to go for the regions, but you were beating me out on that every single chance I could get. So once I realized that my first
what
game theory, I switched and then decided to go for not the ones that were going to help me in the game, but the ones that are going to help me at the end of the game because we were beyond halfway point.
Because in the basic game, you only do have 6 knowledge spaces, and once you fill them up, you can't take anything off and refill them. They're there for good. So I think what Ian was getting at is, I think you want to be more picky when you pick your knowledge ones.
Well, I mean, I would say like the first round, maybe the second or I guess what do they call them?
It's rounds and phases.
Okay, within the round, if like first or second round, you get in-game stuff.
That'd be a great idea.
And then past the third one, you are now getting end-game stuff.
Yeah.
If you can get the end-game stuff, if you can get a good end-game token, like in the beginning, yeah, go ahead and go for it. But if you, other than that, wait that section.
I was waiting for the end game tokens once I saw a pattern of what since you were smoking me on everything else. Once I figured out a pattern that I had with what I had on my board, I went for the end game pieces, and we were about around
And
3.
I'll have to say,
There's also things with the animals too, that
yes,
when
that was ridiculous.
when you lay them down, and then if you get like animals, there's a actual number of animals on each little token here, and you get that amount of on the board.
Well, they call each of the light green spaces pastures. So if you have one set of cows in a pasture and you add another set of cows to the pasture, for every animal you put in the pasture, you get a victory point. You move up. Well, when you lay another tile with the same type of animal within the pasture, you don't just get that tiles, you add on the previous tiles animals too. So if you have a 3 and you lay another 3, you get 6 points. And then you lay another 3, you get 9 points.
And they have anywhere from 2 to 4, right?
Yeah, 2 to 4 animals on them. So they can give you a really good, I mean, if you
I jumped
fill it
like
up with-
45 points, just like boom.
Yeah, if
once
you
you
did
start
like all
placing your
cows, I
cows.
got like 15 points.
I saw that happen. I'm just like, I'm doing that. I'm gonna do that next, and then I split.
My other strategy would be the light blue are ships, and the ships determine where you end up on the turn order. Basically, every time you put a ship into your estate, you move forward on this tracker. And I stayed the first player through the majority of the game, which I found to be pretty good. In the end, it didn't work out so well for me, but if you're the first player, you get the first pick of stuff on the board. So if you can really get those ships first and get them on your board before everybody else, you can really kind of bump yourself up really quick in the game. And like I said, get kind of the pick of the litter, pick of the...
I didn't see that as... I get where I got kind of left behind on some pieces, but really the ships are there to get your...
To get goods, too.
Yeah.
To get the goods.
In the first game, it was
still
very important.
Yeah, but this one, it was a very close game. I mean, we were all within 10 victory points of each other at the end of the game.
Before the final count, yeah.
And I think I had 2 ships, maybe, and I was last almost the whole time. And for me, that was a little bit of a benefit because I could kind of see how everybody was playing out their turn and kind of play against that. So.
Our first game ended up being very important for some reason. I'm trying to go back in my mind and figure out why was this so important, because I got my blues and I was well ahead of everybody else at that
That's
first
true.
game.
Yeah.
It just depends
maybe you
how everyone else
understood
plays
a little
too.
bit better than a lot of us because I jumped in and took over somebody's
That's true.
turn halfway through. So
That did make it hard.
And this is a game where you're going to formulate your strategies over, I think, many gameplays.
yeah,
Going into likes and dislikes now. Does anyone have anything else they'd like in
strategy.
search? In likes and dislikes, the one thing I like about this game is that there are multiple strategies. So if you go after one strategy and it's not working, and you're at turn 3, you're not done with the game like a lot of games, which is you're out. There's another strategy you can grab onto and say, okay, my first strategy didn't work, but I'm not out of the game. As we saw, I mean,
So
Ian
kind
was
of,
killing us.
the idea that you're not gonna, you're not, if you're at round 4, you're not screwed. If your strategy falls through. You can jump on another.
And you can come back.
Yeah.
And like I was way behind everybody else, and somehow I was able to pull enough knowledge tokens to win it at the end. I like that approach.
I also like that even though like your strategy didn't pull through as strong as you wanted it to, it's still giving you victory points. Even though you're still moving up the board because it's still working semi-effectively no matter what really, unless it just terribly fails, which I never noticed.
No, I don't think there's anything.
And what kind of goes into that, kind of playing off that, is the fact that there are so many different strategies that it's not like if 2 players jump on the main, the main type of goods and the main type of tokens, they're basically going to rule the game. There's enough different options out there that you can really get victory points some way. You're not going to be screwed if somebody gets all the mines or somebody gets all the ships or somebody gets all of the castles. You have an option out there.
I did notice a lot, though. There was a few times where I was like, oh, I could have got 30 points there, and then I ended up only getting 10 because of somebody took a piece or my dice roll wasn't exactly what I was hoping for, or certain variables that happen. But yeah, I mean that's kind of
this one is dependent a lot on dice,
It
which
is.
a lot so there's a luck aspect to that. I know quite a few European games don't like that luck aspect. They kind of turn away. To me, I kind of felt it leveled the playing field a little bit in this game. Because if the first player would have ultimate power in this, if it wasn't for the dice rolls, and
they can pick what they
exactly.
Yeah.
So the dice rolls, even though there's randomness that I've heard people not like in this game, I think it really balances the game so that the person who has the ships isn't just dominating throughout the entire
And
play.
it's not, I mean, the dice don't completely control. I mean, it has to do a lot with it. But
you can
there's so
manipulate those rolls.
there's so many varieties of what you can do with the dice that I think that it plays in your favor either way. Like, oh, I wanted this, but I can do this instead.
I'm going to throw out as a dislike, and I don't know how you fix this necessarily.
The board?
The board is one, yeah. I think we've kind of beat that down. But
it does get crowded.
My other dislike is the fact that I think the rules are maybe, to some extent, a little too complicated for their own good. Because if you don't remember all the little rules, there was times where we'd get through one turn and get on to the next turn, and somebody would be like, oh, I forgot about this one tiny rule that I could have taken advantage of and gave myself 5 victory points. There's so many rules out there to keep track of that it's hard to really fairly get yourself the points you deserve, especially I could see your first 5 times through this game really having a hard time keeping track of all that stuff.
I might want to add 10 on that.
I can see your point. I don't think it's that bad, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because the tokens, for the most part, do we have a yellow token? Tell you what they do. So if you can recognize a token, there are some that are random and that I would have to look up.
Yeah, some of the pictures are not. They give you descriptive pictures, like you said. Some of them are okay, some of them aren't.
Yeah, some of them are more random than others.
And then you have buildings,
but I think they're not too bad.
Which again, you get a kind of a key of what the buildings do for you, but sometimes it's not exactly clear what they mean. So it's that, but there's also the rules that don't correspond to a piece necessarily that you have to keep track of, and a lot of those are the victory point rules. You just have to remember when I do a certain thing,
and only some people get the bonus, and some people don't.
Yeah,
that was a little bit of a
trying to keep track of when you get the victory points and how many you get and why you get them.
That comes with gameplay.
Yeah.
Sure.
It has a high learning curve, I think, which probably gets into the age. I think it's a 12+ game. I think that's probably very fair.
We have the.
It should be on the...
No, it's on the bottom.
I'm just going to say that I am nowhere near 12, and there's times where I was lost.
Yeah,
At a certain point, I'm going, what? Like, I was trying to figure out the rules more than I was trying to figure out my strategy at some points in the game.
And if anyone can ever figure out why there's a 200... I can see you possibly getting 200 points in this, but you've got to work hard to get that 200 point. The token has one set for 100, and if you're lucky enough, it says...
You laugh at that board a second time.
If you laugh at the board a second time, even though there's a lot of rounds, a lot of phases...
Our highest
I want to know what the highest score was.
I think if one person actually got 200, they should just call the game before the
I think I got 160 the first game.
Yeah,
I got 160 something the first game. At the end.
With all bonuses.
But yeah, but 200, you're playing Cutthroat and... Yeah, you're whomping on them. I think that's kind of funny that it's 200, and I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure we're going to get people to say, I've done it. Pictures or it didn't happen. That's what I'm saying, because this is
I think it's actually when you actually incorporate double coupon days.
then you
get that's what that meant in the rule book.
Yeah,
the cheat card from Cosmic.
Exactly.
It gets you that...
But anyway, like I said, I think it's got a high learning curve, and that goes into, like I said, I'm sure my explanation of the rules at the beginning of this game... I apologize.
Really bad.
Yeah, but
really bad.
Go and look at the rule book. That's the best I can tell you.
Make copies for everyone at the table.
So we could have made that a 30-second intro.
Yeah,
that's something that I would like to say.
Rule book.
If you're worried about the rule book, the section that you really need to look at is they have a section of the rule book.
Like 2 pages.
The 2 pages that show you what each of the icons mean, And if you make a photocopy of that and give it to everyone, I think that would be a very smooth way to do it. They can flip it back and forth.
It might help along with the process for us because we were going back to it like, oh, what's this mean? What's this mean?
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that'd make it smoother.
a few times, I think that the game would move along a little bit quicker that way too.
All right, let's
Just score
jump
it?
into our reviews here. We do a 0 to 10, technically, I guess. I don't know if we ever used that.
Candyland.
1 being terrible, 5 being all right, 10 being, buy this game right now. Andrew.
Well, there's quite a few things, and normally I really like this type of game where, your strategy and all this, and you're trying to build things, and you're trying to... I gotta give it a 6. I just didn't feel it. Minor things, the board's super crowded for me. Too many rules to try and remember for my taste. I just didn't care for it that much. It wasn't terrible play. I mean, I didn't have a bad time. I didn't lose terribly, and that's, I'm a hard loser or nothing, but it just didn't play out for me very well.
I do want to ask a little question about that scoring. Compare Lords of Waterdeep is also considered a resource management game. I know they're totally different games, but compared to Lords of Waterdeep, what would you?
And I really enjoyed Lords of Waterdeep, and it just seemed like it played better for
faster.
me.
That's what I was wondering. It
seemed like this one was.
I don't know if
too
for me,
cluttered.
I don't know if it's a faster thing, but
it's not necessarily a fast thing. It's just how it plays.
Theme.
Like I just couldn't get engaged enough in
And
this
theme.
game
Yeah. Okay.
to with the rules and with the. Because normally the theme on this type of game, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, it could be your aliens, it could be whatever. It didn't work for me.
Cool.
I mean, it's got good mechanics and everything seems to
to
work.
clear
It
that
just
there's a
You did buy into it.
right.
Good. Okay.
I agree with Andrew to some degree on that. I'm going to give it a 7.
Because you own it.
Because I own it. It would have been about 2 lower if I did. No. I'm going to give it a 7. It's
and Brian
a
both.
fun game. My problem with it was, unlike Lords of Waterdeep or Stone Age,
Manhattan Project.
No. Lords of Waterdeep, Stone Age, those types of games, you kind of get into a flow with it. You know what you're going to be doing. You kind of build it up and just kind of play the game out. It's a little more relaxing, I guess, in a sort of way. You don't have to be quite as engaged. And this game is the same, in the same genre, but it was just, like Andrew said, it got too complicated at times. I got to the point where I couldn't keep going with the flow, which gets to the strategy thing, which is great. You can pick different strategies, you can switch strategies mid-game, but there's just too much out there. I think it's a little too complicated for its own good. I'll play it again, but I'm probably going to pick up Lords of Waterdeep or Stone Age before I do.
Wow, I'm going to be on the way high end of this one, I can already tell. I'm giving this one a 9.
Whoa!
I
You're
love
way off.
You sir are wrong, right?
Divided by 3.
You don't own this.
I don't? Crap. No, I'll be very...
Brian,
I'll be very honest. I like Euro type games. I do. I like the strategy portion. I like the fact that I'm forced to come up with different strategies in the middle of the game. I do like the complication a little bit more, and the give and take on it. I don't really, again, problems with all Euro games. It's not very appealing. I think the gameplay is solid enough. I like the complicated, constant thinking project of what is my next move. And it just plays really solidly for me. So I think I gave Waterdeep an 8 or a 9 too, and I think these are they're totally different themes. I play them both whenever they hit the table for totally different reasons. I like them both, so I give them a 9.
I'm going to go with a 6 with the rest of the group.
I'm taking this home.
The reason
you cannot have this, and neither can you.
Well, I enjoy Lords of Waterdeep. That was a really fun game.
Yep.
And the reason that there was more interaction between the players versus...
That is true.
I'm just placing on my board and picking from the thing, and really it's just, I didn't get to it before you didn't get to it, kind of thing.
That's true, yeah.
And then there's really a whole, because of it's so complex, you're really not battling each other because obviously you can change your strategy mid-game. You can do something else. It's like, oh, he's doing that, I'm just going to do something different. So really you're playing yourself and you're trying to figure it out. It's really complex, but I love strategy, but I'm not too keen on Euro games. It's just because my problem is what I'm doing in the game. You're basically not
engaging.
You're not engaged to that. And then all of a sudden at the end you're trying to score around the tracker. And that disconnect for me as far as the score around the outside versus what you're actually functionally doing within the game. For me, there's a huge disconnect, and I just don't engage with them as well.
And I think you bring up a good point. The reason I brought up Lords of Waterdeep is they are two totally different games. You're right. With Lords of Waterdeep, there's a lot more player interaction,
And I like that.
which is more your. I agree. This is much more
I'm
European.
very PvP. I'm
Absolutely.
not PvE.
No, I totally understand. this is more your basic European, which is your strategy is your strategy, and somebody might deflect it a little bit, but it's still your strategy. Unlike Lords of Waterdeep, which is more in your face.
Looking at our reviews as a whole, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think what maybe part of this gets to is us four sitting at the table here. I think we lean, if you took us all as an average, more to the lighter side. Besides Pat, he's more of a.
I'm the heavier gamer.
More hardcore gamer.
We're gonna call you dork.
We like the term geek a little bit.
Okay.
We like geek.
So, I mean, take this review with that in mind. I mean, I think I'd say Ian, myself, and Andrew are more on the lighter side of gaming. I know there's a lot of people love this game out there. And not that I don't think we didn't like it.
No, and
We're
that's
in
not
the average area.
that's not where my
as
score
reviews.
is at. That I didn't like it, and I'm not dogging the game because the game and the mechanics and everything worked great.
It's just not your game.
It just was not my game.
And that's why I say I don't think it fits
if you
our
look,
group as a whole.
If you look at our profiles on meeplesandmeeples.com, we each said the games that we like, and if you look at mine, I'm going more for the Game of Thrones and the really hardcore ones. So
Gears of War.
Gears of War, which has been done. Eventually, we're going to give you that video. If you ask for it, we will put it online sometime. But
I think we
No,
just
we
need to
won't.
refilm that again.
No,
yeah.
And don't let your children watch.
Yeah, that's right. Don't, it was rough.
Last episode.
It's our last episode. But anyways, so this is sometimes where we come through this, and this is one that really shows that coming through. I agree.
All right, well, that's our review for Castles of Burgundy. Have we picked out a game for next week? We've been pimping this one for so long.
I know. I keep forgetting that we need a new game for next week.
And I'm actually out, so you guys get to pick.
Candyland.
No.
What?
No. What type of game do you guys want to?
Why don't we
I
do
have
your?
no
You got
idea.
Samurai Sword. You've been bringing for the last.
Okay,
2
we'll
weeks.
play. It's a simple card game made by the creators of
Yes.
Bang. We'll do Samurai Sword.
Samurai S word.